Hello, students. Welcome to Smart World, a school of complete education. Today, we are going to learn the subject English, chapter 4.2, The Storyteller. 1. Short stories are of many types. Match the type of a story in column A with its description in column B. Story type. In the first column, there are story types. In the second column, there are description. आपको मैच करना है कौन सा स्टोरी टाइप कौन से डिस्क्रिप्शन के साथ जाता है. First, I'll read out all the column in which all the story titles are written: anecdote, fable, parable, myth, legend, fairy tale, tragic tale, fiction, fark, satire. Now I'll read out the descriptions. A. Serious and ends in a tragedy. B. Untrue but realistic. C. Short amusing account of an incident. D. Where vices and folly are ridiculed. E. Moral bearing story with animal characters. F. Having historical based characters but may not be true. G. Having religious base and a message or moral. H. Exaggerated comedy. I. Having supernatural characters or a moral for children. J. Originated in ancient times. Authorship unknown. Complete question number 2. Complete the following story using the verbs in the brackets in their proper form. Footprint. One night a man dash bracket have a dream. He dash bracket dream that he was dash bracket walk along the beach with God. Across the sky flashed scenes from his life. For each scene he noticed two sets of footprints in the sand, one dash bracket belonged to him and the other to God. After the last scene dash bracket flash, he looked back at the footprints in the sand. He dash bracket observed that many times along the path of his life there dash bracket be only one set of footprints and that it dash bracket happened at the saddest, most dash bracket trouble times of his life. He dash bracket questioned God about it. God, you dash bracket say that once I dash bracket decide to follow you, you dash bracket will walk with me all the way. So I don't understand why you dash bracket leave me alone when I dash bracket need you most. God replied, during your times of trials and sufferings where you dash bracket see only one set of footprints, they dash bracket be mine, for it was then that I dash bracket carry you in my arms. The Storyteller. It was a hot afternoon and the railway carriage was correspondingly sultry, and next stop was at Templecombe, nearly an hour ahead. The occupants of the carriage were a small girl, a smaller girl, and a small boy. The aunt occupied one corner seat, and the further corner seat on the opposite side was occupied by a bachelor who was a stranger to their party, but the small girls and small boy empathetically occupied the compartment. Both the aunt and children were conversational in a limited, persistent way, reminding one of the attentions of a housefly that refuses to be discouraged. Most of the aunt's remarks seemed to begin with don't, and nearly all of children's remarks began with why. The bachelor said nothing out loud. Don't, Cyril, don't, exclaimed the aunt, as a small boy began smacking the cushions of the seat, producing a cloud of dust at each blow. Come and look out of the window, she added. The child moved reluctantly to the window. Why are those sheep being driven out of that field? He asked. I expect they are being driven to another field where there is more grass, said the aunt weakly. But there is a lot of grass in that field, protested the boy. There's nothing else but grass there. Aunt, there are lots of grass in that field. Perhaps the grass in the other field is better, suggested the aunt fatuously. Why is it better? Came the swift, inevitable question. Oh, look at those cows, exclaimed the aunt. Nearly every field along the line had contained cows or bullocks, but she spoke as though she was drawing attention to a rarity. Answer the following questions from the passage till now. How many occupants did the compartment have? Why did the aunt have to use the word don't so often? Let's understand the meaning of a few words. Empathetically, in a noticeable manner, fatuously, foolishly, inevitable, which means unavoidable. Let's continue with the story. Why is the grass in the other field better? Persisted Cyril. The frown of the bachelor's face was deepening to a scowl. He was a hard, unsympathetic man, the aunt decided in her mind. She was utterly unable to come out to any satisfactory decision about the grass in the other field. The smaller girl created a diversion by beginning to recite on the road to Mandalay. She only knew the first line, but she put her limited knowledge to the fullest possible use. She repeated the line over and over again in a dreamy but resolute and very audible voice. It seemed to the bachelor as though someone had had a bet with her that she could not repeat the line aloud 2000 times without stopping. Whoever it was who had made the wager was likely to lose his bet. Come over here and listen to a story, said the aunt when the bachelor had looked twice at her. The children moved listlessly towards the aunt's end of the carriage. Evidently, her reputation as a storyteller did not rank high in their estimation. In a low, confidential voice, interrupted at frequent intervals by loud, petulant questionings from a listener, she began an unenterprising and deplorably uninteresting story about a little girl who was good and made friends with everyone on account of her goodness, and was finally saved from a mad bull by a number of rescuers who admired her moral character. Wouldn't they have saved her if she hadn't been good? Demanded the bigger and the small girls. It was exactly the question that the bachelor had wanted to ask. Well, yes, admitted the aunt lamely, but I don't think they would have run quite so far to her help if they did not like her so much. It's the superiorest story I've ever heard, said the bigger and the smaller girls with immense conviction. I didn't listen after the first bit, it was so stupid, said Cyril. Let's answer a few questions till now. How did the smaller of the two girls irritate the bachelor? To which question from Cyril was aunt unable to give reasonable answer. How did children show their disapproval to the aunt's story? Let's understand the meaning of the few words. A scowl, an angry look. Resolute, which means firm. Estimation, which means opinion. Petulant, which means unreasonable. Deplorably, which means in a very bad way. Let's continue with the story. The smaller girl made no actual comment on the story, but she had long ago recommended a murmured reception in a favorite line. You don't seem to be a success as a storyteller, said the bachelor suddenly from his corner. The aunt bristled in instant defense at his unexpected attack. It is a very difficult thing to tell stories that children can both understand and appreciate it, she said stiffly. I don't agree with you, said the bachelor. Perhaps you would like to tell them a story, was the aunt's retort. Tell us a story, demanded the bigger of smaller girls. Once upon a time, began the bachelor, there was a little girl called Bertha who was extraordinarily good. The children's momentarily aroused interest began at once to flicker. All stories seemed dreadfully alike no matter who told them. She did all she could. She was told she was always truthful. She kept her clothes clean, ate milk puddings as though they were jam tarts, learned her lessons perfectly, and was polite in her manners. Was she pretty? Asked the bigger of the smaller girls. Not as pretty as any of you, said the bachelor, but she was horribly good. There was a wave of reaction in favor of the story. The word horrible in connection with goodness was novelty that commended itself. It seemed to introduce a ring of truth that was absent from the aunt's tales of infant life. Let's understand a few meanings of the words. Bristled means which means got angry. Commended means which means proved acceptable. Part 2. She was so good, continued the bachelor, that she won several medals for goodness which she always wore pinned on her dress. There was a medal for obedience, another medal for punctuality, and a third one for good behavior. There were large metal medals, and they clicked against one another as she walked. No other child in town where she lived had as many as three medals, so everybody knew that she must be extra good child. Horribly good, quoted Cyril. Everybody talked about her goodness, and the prince of the country got to hear about it, and he said that she was so very good she might be allowed once a week to walk in his park, which was just outside the town. It was a beautiful park, and no children were ever allowed in it, so it was a great honor for Bertha to be allowed to go there. Were there any sheep in the park? Demanded Cyril. No, said the bachelor. There were no sheep, but there was other small harmless animals in the park. The storyteller paused to let a full idea of park's treasures sink in the children's imagination, then he resumed. Bertha was rather sorry to find that there were no flowers in the park. She had promised her aunt with her tears in her eyes that she would not pick any of the kind prince flowers, and she had meant to keep her promise, so of course it made her feel silly to find that there were no flowers to pick. Why weren't there any flowers? Because the animals had eaten them all, said the bachelor promptly. The gardeners had told the prince that you couldn't have animals and flowers, so he decided to have animals and no flowers. There was a murmur of approval at excellence of Prince's decision, so many people would have decided the other way. Now answer the following questions. For which three values did Bertha win medals? What was exceptional about it? Question number 2. How did Prince reward Bertha? Question number 3. Why did the children approve of Prince's decision? Let's continue with the story further. There were lots of other delightful things at the park. There were ponds with gold and blue and green fish in them, and trees with beautiful parrots that said clever things at a moment's notice, and hummingbirds that hummed all the popular tunes of the day. Bertha walked up and down and enjoyed herself immensely and thought to herself, if I were not so extraordinarily good, I should not have been allowed to come into this beautiful park and enjoy all that there is to be seen in it. And her three medals clinked against one another as she walked and helped to remind her how good she really was. Just then, an enormous wolf came prowling into the park to see if she could catch a fat little animal for its supper. The first thing that it saw in the park was Bertha. Her pinafore was so spotlessly white and clean that it could be seen from the great distance. Bertha saw the wolf and saw that it was stealing towards her, and she began to wish that she had never been allowed to come into the park. She ran as hard as she could, and the wolf came after her with huge leaps and bounds. She managed to reach a shrubbery of myrtle bushes, and she hid herself in one of the thickest of the bushes. The wolf came sniffing along the branches, its black tongue lolling out of its mouth and pale grey eyes glaring with rage. Bertha was terribly frightened and thought to herself, if I had not been so extraordinarily good, I should have been safe in the town at this moment. However, the scent of myrtle was so strong that the wolf could not sniff out where Bertha was hiding, and the bushes were so thick that he might have hunted about in them for a long time without catching sight of her, so he thought he might well go off and catch little animal instead. Bertha was trembling very much at having the wolf prowling and sniffing so near her, and as she trembled, the medal of obedience clinked against the medals of good conduct and punctuality. The wolf was just moving away when he heard the sound of the medals clinking and stopped to listen. They clinked again in the bush quite near him. Now answer a few questions. Why did Bertha wish she had never come back to the park? Why was the wolf unable to taste Bertha? Now let's understand the meaning of few words. Myrtle, bush with shiny leaves and sweet smelling white flowers. Ferocity, fierce violence. Let's continue with the story. They clinked again in a bush quite near him. He dashed into the bush, his pale grey eyes gleaming with ferocity and triumph, and dragged Bertha out and devoured her to the last morsel. All that was left of her was her shoes, bits of clothing, and three medals of goodness. The story began badly, said the smaller of the small girls, but it had a beautiful ending. It was the most beautiful story I have ever heard, and the bigger of the smaller girls with immense decision. It is the only beautiful story I have ever heard, said Cyril. A dissentient opinion came from the aunt. A most improper story to tell young children. You had undermined the effect of years of careful teaching. At any rate, said the bachelor, collecting his belongings preparatory out to leaving the carriage. I kept them quiet for 10 minutes, which was more than you were able to do. Unhappy woman, he observed to himself as he walked down the platform of Templecombe station for the next 6 months, and so those children will assail her in public with demands of improper story. By H. Munro, bracket Saki. Now let's answer a few questions. What gave Bertha away and how did she meet her end? What impact did the story have on children? Why was their aunt annoyed at the bachelor? Now let's understand a few meanings. Dissentment, dissenting or different, not agreeing. Assail, which means attack. English workshop 1. From the story part 1 and part 2, find 4 words that begin with the prefix un and write their opposites. Question number 2. Find one example of the following punctuation marks from the story and copy sentence in which they are used. A. Colon. B. Semicolon. Question number 3. Read the following pieces from the story and suggest a title for each one in the first one. 1. The first column is from, second column is up to, and the third column is title. So it goes like this in the first question. It was a hot afternoon. And it is written from, and in up to it is written, said the aunt weakly. The title is Children Pester Their Aunt. The second goes, the smaller girl created a diversion dash up to dash likely to lose his bet. From, in a low confidential voice, dash up to dash it was so stupid, said Cyril. Fourth, she bracket Bertha did all she was told dash up to dash must be an extra good child. The storyteller paused to let dash up to dash popular tunes of the day. From Bertha was trembling very much dash up to dash the three medals for goodness dash. You have to suggest titles for all these. Question number 4. Write your opinion in your own words. A. Why do you think the children dislike their aunt's story? B. Why did they appreciate or praise the stranger's story? C. Do you think Bertha should have met such a gory end to her life? Justify the answer. D. What did the aunt fail to realize in Bertha's story? E. What is that one voice which nullifies all virtues that a person has? F. Write down 2 or 3 proverbs or axioms that suit the message in Bertha's story. Question number 5. Write 3 to 5 sentences about each of the following characters: the aunt, the bachelor, Cyril, and Bertha. Question number 6. Say whether you agree or disagree. A. The children would have behaved well in the train if their aunt had scolded them harshly. Dash. The youngest child was most irritating. Dash. Being a bachelor, the stranger had no patience with them. D. The children showed disinterest even in the bachelor storytelling throughout. Dash. E. Bertha was very good but very proud too. Dash. F. The prince had rare uncommon likes and dislikes. Dash. G. The wolf could not trace Bertha because she was behind a myrtle bush. Dash. H. The bachelor had narrated an improper story to the children. Question number 7. The storyteller has a story within a story. Search from the internet or your library books for other stories which have another story within and list at least 3 to 5 of them. Question number 8. List all the verbs related to the verbs say or tell from the story. Note where they occur. Rewrite at least 3 of the speeches near which they occur using indirect speech. Question number 9. Read The Open Window by H. H.